It is a particularly special event. I hope word hasn't slipped out as to what's special about it yet. So it's extra special when I share who's here. But it's with great pleasure that we have someone here who, I mean, when we started this, it started with 25 people meeting upstairs. We didn't anticipate that it would grow to be over 150 coming on a regular basis to our 25th event, having one of the world's most renowned entrepreneurs. Somebody who is become notorious with the term entrepreneur and has just done incredible things. So I would love to just welcome up our guest this evening, who has come from the United States, from San Francisco, Jack Dorsey right now. So can we hear it for him? Welcome, Jack. Welcome. So good to have you. Come on over and join us on the seat here. Welcome, Jack. Have you learned much Amharic yet, or at what stage are you at on the Amharic spectrum?
Not much at all. Sorry.
Not much at all.
I'm good. I'll get there.
You'll get there?
Get there.
Okay.
When I come back.
Yeah, which hopefully will be soon.
Very soon.
So just tell us a little bit about the purpose of this trip. Why are you on the continent, and why have you visited a few places? Why have you come to Ethiopia?
Well, so this is my first time on the continent, and I've wanted to come for some time in a personal capacity, independent of the businesses of Twitter and Square, because I wanted to learn. I wanted to listen to what was happening, to understand, to experience it directly, not through any sort of mediation of someone else's experience or story, but just to live it directly. So I started in Nigeria, went to Ghana, spent a little bit of time in South Africa, and now here in Ethiopia. Spent the majority of the time talking with entrepreneurs and talking with students and talking with artists and musicians. I haven't spent any time at all talking with government and the press, and that was intentional because I wanted to learn directly from the people first and foremost, so that when I do come back, which I do intend to come back, and I'm actually going to live on the continent for 6 months. And then just determining where, and some of it will be in Ethiopia, hopefully, and and then with that time, I do want to do whatever I can to help support entrepreneurship and people building and creating within these countries. I'm fascinated and excited by cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular. And I've also had the opportunity to meet a bunch of folks who are also interested in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And the reason I think it's really important here for Africa is because, unlike the United States, there's not as much urgency in terms of the practicality and the need and the necessity. So it feels like that urgency and that necessity will drive to much deeper outcomes and things that will benefit the entire world, not just the countries within Africa. So I'm here to listen and learn. That's the point of this trip, and then going forward to support in whatever way that is useful.
Incredible. I think a whole bunch of people the whole day and throughout your time here have sat and actually witnessed, and it's genuine listening, just asking questions, and I think it means so much to people who are trying to set up to have someone like you just in their presence, asking them questions, looking to learn. And so I think the impact is going to be far-reaching, far deeper than you might even know. I'd love to know a little bit about your reflections on what kind of things you've learned so far, or what your take is on what's going on here in Ethiopia from talking to all these people. I know you probably haven't had time to process too much just yet, but just out of your discussions here and the other countries you've been to, what's some of your kind of immediate reflections?
Well, one of the questions I've asked everyone that I've met in every country is what is something, and to speak to Ethiopia for a minute, what is something about Ethiopia that the world doesn't realize or isn't aware of that it should be? And what's been interesting about Ethiopia is that answer has been consistent throughout. The strong amount of pride is always mentioned within the country and the people. the spirituality and the religious aspects and the faith within the country is always mentioned. The individuality and uniqueness has always been mentioned. And I find that too, it resonates. And I just find the people to be so warm and welcoming and caring and empathetic and supportive. From a business perspective, from a creation perspective, this country feels very deliberate and very sophisticated and very much thinking about a long term. And I only say that because I contrast it a bit with Nigeria, and I'm more of the mindset that I found in Nigeria, which is I'm through and through like a hustler and a hacker, and I just do whatever it takes to make it work and just go the next step and the next step and the next step. And I have so much respect and appreciation for that. And one of the things I've learned over time is how you have to balance that with the deliberateness, and how you have to balance that with something that is longer term and more deliberate. So I found those two really interesting and useful, I think, contrast. And when you consider the whole of the continent, that speaks to something that could be quite powerful and quite special. The other thing that I think is unique about Ethiopia, unlike the other countries I've visited here, is that it feels very much like a blank slate. Like it feels like there's a ton of opportunity to invent and reinvent and just question, and it feels like it's happened very quickly. And I know that's probably not the lived experience. It feels like there's been just so much pain to get to this point, but it feels like there's a pivot right now, and it feels very strong, and it feels present in every conversation that I've had, and that feels very powerful. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
It certainly does, and I think it's fascinating to see that really shine through. And there's a term in Amharic called chugayellam, and it's like don't worry, and it speaks into that kind of relaxed nature or the non-aggressive taking of hustling in a way, and I think that's shone through. I'm just sitting here going, I'm sitting next to Jack Dorsey, people. I'm like, it takes me a moment right here, you know, just to just breathe a little, because sometimes you can talk without thinking because you're sitting next to someone you've respected for a long time. So bear with me in that. So Jack, I mean, no one really needs introduction into what Twitter is, or maybe Square a little bit. I think payment systems aren't something that are necessarily that advanced here just yet. But I would love to hear a bit more about the journey of getting to where you are here today. Was it something you'd envisioned from the very beginning? Was this the dream to be who you are and doing what you're doing now? Or talk a little bit into that entrepreneurship journey a little bit.
Yeah. So I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was not a dream ever. It was not even a consideration. I never wanted to be a CEO. I never wanted to create a business. I never wanted to run a business. I never wanted to lead a company. I didn't want to be a leader. I didn't want to manage a team. I didn't want to do any of the stuff that I find myself doing right now. So my whole career is really about I wanted to create. I wanted to build. And little by little, I learned that building can happen to a level, and then you have to change something or add something to take it to the next level. So I started when I was 13 or 14. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. Missouri is in the middle of the United States. It's considered a flyover state, which means that people just fly over it. They don't really stop there. And certainly no one lives there, but I live there and my parents live there. And I was really proud of my city. St. Louis is a tough city to live in. It's the highest homicide rate in the country. It has a lot of conflict, a lot of contention. The city was destroyed in the 50s and 60s because everyone moved out. It's always been left behind, but yet it had a very significant soul to it that was powerful. And it has some special qualities that no one was really aware of, which is why I asked this question about Ethiopia. one of the qualities it had is it has this pretty interesting geography in that it's in the middle of the country. It's considered the gateway to the West. And when the internet was forming, you had MIT and then you had Stanford, and the two needed to link up. And we didn't have a lot of satellites and whatnot, so it was all, through the phone lines and whatnot. And the way to link up was through St. Louis. And there's a school called WashU. And back then, when my dad brought home a computer, I just had to figure out how to make this thing do my bidding. I just wanted to learn everything about it. So I taught myself how to program. I taught myself my way around it, and figuring out like how to take it apart from a software perspective and a hardware perspective, and found all the holes and whatnot. And I became a hacker, more or less. And that led me to figure out how to get into the WashU systems. And that led me to this thing called the internet. And on the internet, I found all this source code, and I found all these really interesting communities and things like Usenet and IRC, and people sharing their work in the open. And that's how I learned how to program. But I had this idea that I wanted to build, which was to understand my city. I wanted to visualize it. I wanted to see the movement. I wanted to see where people were traveling to and what people were doing. And I wanted to program all that on the computer. And little by little, I just learned more about what this was. And eventually I learned that it was dispatch. There was this whole field called dispatch. And I was writing dispatch software, it turns out. I had no idea. And that led to another thing and led to another thing. And eventually I didn't have a job until I was 29 years old. I never wrote a resume until I was 29 years old. I did all this contract work for all these dispatch firms, and I was just living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck just because I loved the work and I loved this understanding that I got of the city. And eventually it led me to New York City, and I was writing dispatch software for 9/11 emergency services and taxis and black cars. And I realized, this was 98, 99, that I wanted to start a company around this. I didn't want to join a company, I wanted to start a company. And in order to do that, I had to move to San Francisco. And I didn't really want to move to San Francisco. I wanted to either be in St. Louis or New York. But I had to, because that was the place that everything was happening. And that happened, and that company completely failed. We had to give the money back to the investors, and that was a disaster. But in 2006, SMS got really big, text messaging got really big in the United States, and kind of took that dispatch idea of like reporting where the taxi cab is to the people. Like, what if I could report where I was or what I was doing, and I could send it from my mobile phone through a text message, and that was Twitter. So we built it. Within 2 weeks, we fell in love with it, and then we decided that we wanted to focus our attention on it, and that required that we had to pay ourselves, and we had to pay other people to work on it with us, and that meant we needed money. So we needed to raise money because we didn't have the money, so we had to go to VCs and raise the money. And if we were to raise the money, we needed someplace to put the money, so we incorporated a company to hold the money. And then we needed a leader for the company, so I became the CEO of the company. And then I had to learn how to pitch VCs about our ideas. And there I was, an entrepreneur and a CEO. So it happened because it needed to happen. It wasn't a goal to build a business. It wasn't a goal to become a CEO. It was the only way to take the idea to the next level. And that continues to this day. Like every day, every month, every year, there's a new challenge that I'm ill-equipped to handle, and I have to learn how to do it, and then that becomes the new floor. And then there's another floor, and I need to raise that floor and make that the floor. And so I still don't want to be a CEO. I still don't want to run a company, but I want this idea to be useful to people, and I want it to thrive, and I recognize the gaps that I have and the company has in order that's blocking that. And to me, that is the definition of entrepreneur. It's again, more the Nigerian hustle. It's to do whatever you do, whatever it takes to make it work. do whatever it takes to make it work. And it's usually at significant risk to yourself, usually at financial risk, but some sort of personal sacrifice. And I made a lot of personal sacrifices to get to this place, but it's all in the spirit of doing something much bigger than myself, ultimately.
That's incredible. And for someone who never wanted to run a company, to run two of the biggest companies in the world, it's not bad. Maybe that's...
They're not the biggest.
Okay, it's getting there, right? I mean, if you just
I don't want to be the biggest.
Okay.
I want them to be valuable to people individually. And that's the thing is like, I think we do strive for, like, we see success as like size and maybe breadth, but depth is just as important. And it's one of the things my mom taught me is she had a coffee store when I was 12 and 13, and it was in St. Louis, Missouri, and it was kind of right in the center of the city. And I would always bug her up. I'd be like, why can't we be like Starbucks? Why can't we go everywhere, open another location, or maybe like hire people who are not your sons? Because her only employees were me and my two younger brothers. Like, let's hire some other people that aren't in the family. And she said, no, that's not what I want. I don't want to have another location. I don't want to have people working that aren't you. I want to have a place for St. Louis to gather and to meet each other and to enjoy each other's company. And I just learned in that moment, like, before that, success was like a Starbucks, like have as many stores as possible, as quickly as possible. And for my mom, success was depth. Like, she wanted to be the root of her community. She wanted to be a floor that they could gather upon and like work things out and talk. And ambition is different for everyone, and one is not better than the other. But for me, it's like, are we truly deeply valuable to someone? And if it's just 5 people, great. If it's 2 billion people, great. But those 5 are just as important as the 2 billion.
Wow. And I guess that's been, in some sense, part of the key to success, to the things you've grown. What else would you credit being keys to success, to getting to where you are and achieving what you've achieved? What would you credit as success?
I think I'm a really good listener. I think I'm very patient, and I'm very stubborn. And patience and stubbornness go really well together, because you can wait out a lot of the trendiness. And if you have a deep sense of purpose and why you're here and what you want to contribute to and why that matters, then it allows you to be patient in the first place and allows you to be stubborn, and fight. And all that comes from being able to listen first and foremost. And listening is something that's active. It's not a passive engagement. We can listen through words and through text, but I think the more important listening is really the patterns we see and connecting the dots. And I will say that the only reason Twitter is successful as a service and as a company is because we were really good listeners and we were good observers. Every single thing that has made Twitter what it is was not invented by me or anyone in the company. It was actually invented by the people using the service. So we launched this thing, and then suddenly we saw all these people using @ symbols in front of other people's names. And we thought it was like ugly. Like, why are you doing that? Like, we don't want a bunch of like computer syntax on this thing. Like, why are you putting these weird @ symbols in front of people's names? And when we looked deeper at it, what we found is that they weren't just like randomly putting @ symbols in front of people's names. They were trying to direct a message to one another. They're actually trying to communicate with one another on this open platform that we intended just to be like status of like, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm seeing and whatnot. They were actually communicating and wanting to have a conversation. So I took 4 hours one day, and anytime I saw a little @ symbol and a name under it, I would link the name, and then I would collect all the mentions, all the times my name was @Jack, or all the times I saw that, into one page so that I could see everyone mentioning me and everyone trying to communicate with me publicly. And then it just became accessible to everyone, and then everyone started using it. And then the same thing happened with the hashtag. We saw this weird like pound hash symbol in front of these words, and we're like, wow, that's ugly. Why are you doing that again? And what people wanted to do is they wanted to not communicate with each other, but they wanted to communicate about a topic. So it's like, hashtag Ethiopia or hashtag Bitcoin or hashtag basketball. And so we linked that up, and when you click that, you would see all the mentions of hashtag basketball or hashtag NBA. And then that went like wildfire. Same thing for the retweet, same thing for the thread or the tweet storm. All these things were invented by people using our service. We just observed them. We tried to understand the use case, and then we made it more accessible to more people. And not only did it spread like wildfire on our service, it jumped off the service and it went to billboards and it went to television and it went to newspapers and it went to our competitors as well. And we saw Instagram was started about 3 years after Twitter, and they took a lot of the same things. They took the constraint, they took the @ symbol, they took the hashtag. All these things were created by people using Twitter. So that to me is very, very powerful, and that came through this just observation and just, it's not just observation, it's taking that listening, taking that observation, and then understanding, and using that understanding to improve. And I don't know how many of you read the book The Growth Mindset. It's a great book about learning how to learn, which I think is probably the number one skill that we all need to focus on if there's one. But she describes a cycle which is observe, learn, improve. So, listen, take what you hear and try to understand it, try to establish patterns, and then use those patterns, use that understanding to improve, and just repeat. And the faster you can do that, the faster those iterations happen, the more successful you'll be. And if you pair that with like a critical self-awareness of, this, I'm comfortable getting negative feedback, I'm comfortable getting critique so that I can make my ideas better, even of myself, then things will work out generally. But
that's fascinating.
Not a secret.
Yeah, it's fascinating that something that you had come up with or created or seen the potential in is something that the competition has really run with to grow what they've done. Actually, that would be an interesting segue into speaking into competition and a healthy view of competition. In, I guess, many markets, including this one, there's sometimes often the view of new players or new competition is maybe seen as a negative thing. But maybe could you speak into that a little bit, into having a healthy view of competition? I often see the stuff you tweet, and the tone as well is quite fun as well and enjoyable to read. So maybe speak into healthy view of competition.
Well, I think ideally we only have one competitor, because if we have too many, it's just way too distracting. And ideally, that competitor is not external to us, it is us. Like our one competitor ultimately should be ourselves. And that's as an individual or as a company. Because if you're looking out at others and you're competing against that other person, you're basically building their roadmap. You're reacting to their roadmap. And if you can build a discipline of setting a bar for yourself and raising that bar on yourself and competing with yourself, and put it into athletic terms, you run a kilometer in such and such a time, and that's something you want to beat, right? And you bring that time down, and you bring it down, and you bring it down. And if you can do that for yourself, you have so much power, and you can build so much more confidence. And then when you do face someone else, you know that it's more or less a check on yourself, how far you're pushing yourself for what your capabilities are or whatnot. But it's important to build that competitive dynamic within yourself first, and then look externally. So that's number one. And I think, as I think about our companies, the thing that worries me the most is that we're not competing enough with ourselves. We're not taking on enough risk. We're not raising the bar on ourselves enough. And others will, because they have nothing to lose, whereas we have this feeling that we do have something to lose. Others will take that risk, and others will question it. In terms of general competition, I think this is kind of changing, and I think it's evolving, and I think we'll see less and less of just like the direct competition and more opportunity for protocol and cooperation. And I attribute a lot of this to what's happening within blockchain and Bitcoin and the internet at large. There's more technologies enabling people to be more consensus driven and more protocol driven and more cooperation driven. And as I think about Square coming into a place like Ethiopia, I do not want to be a company that competes with the startups or the companies here. I want to figure out how to partner with them and build strength between the companies instead of replacing. And in the US mindset feels very replacement heavy, and capitalism generally feels very replacement heavy, but I think that's shifting. And I think it has to shift because it's not serving us in the best ways right now, because it creates all these misaligned incentives that don't actually serve people, or at least the broadest base of people. It serves only a few people. So
on the topic of technology serving people and the use of it in good and bad, often I think even in this context, we've seen Twitter be used in such a way where internet has had to been shut down in a way, and kind of what role, and then in the US, I guess your president in a way has become famous for the tweets that he tweets, and
infamous.
So kind of what role do these platforms and technology play in providing positive or negative influence to society?
Well, I do think the role word is important because oftentimes it's said as responsibility. And I think if you say that, technology companies are responsible for fixing this, that sets an expectation that can never be lived up to, because it's a shared responsibility, and it's shared responsibility between multiple parties. And I can name at least 4 that should be working together much more closely in order to fix some of these issues. One certainly is our technology providers and services, platforms. Another is government. Another is civil society. And another is the media. We could do a bunch to fix what we would consider misleading information and fake news on Twitter. And if we don't have the same sort of standards in the general media, it will be for naught. We see that a lot of our verified accounts are often the ones that are spreading some of the misleading information and misinformation. And that's not always at the fault of their own. They're just not fully aware of everything that's happening and the full facts just yet. And it just fire and go off. So it requires a lot more coordination, and it requires a lot more cooperation than we've had in the past. And that's why I say this sense of competition isn't serving us anymore. Because the media has felt the need to be competitive, at least for ad dollars, with platforms like Twitter or Facebook or Google, and generally that has not led to conversations around standards and principles and how we might address more of the deeper societal issues faster. So I don't believe that a Twitter or a Facebook or a Google should be the ones who are saying this is fact and this is not, this is truth and this is not, because I wouldn't want someone like me determining that, because I don't have the full context. I don't have the context of the Ethiopian experience. I don't have the tribal knowledge that is found throughout the country and the contrast that's found throughout it. We need local people to be able to be equipped in the right way to call these things out directly. And that, to me, is a function of the tools. It's a function of partnership across other industries. And it's more transparency. And I think where we lack transparency the most is our algorithms. we're handing all these decisions off to these algorithms. Like, how many of you have a watch or a device on your wrist that tells you to stand up every now and then? Good number of you. And like, why is it telling me to stand up right now? I don't know. But even with health, we're giving these machines and we're giving the software the ability to drive our actions, and doing so with very little questioning. And we're doing this in finance, we're doing it in health, we're doing it with our cars and their ability to drive us around. We're doing it with everything. And that's the conversation that we need to have. That's the regulation that we need to have, is like, how are we thinking about adding transparency and explainability and fairness and removing bias from these algorithms that we're building in a faster velocity than's ever happened before.
And still on the topic of technology, you reference blockchain. What kind of opportunities do you see for the likes of blockchain and other types of technology in a market like Ethiopia at this time? Everything.
Everything. I mean, let's see, I met a number of entrepreneurs in Ethiopia who are using blockchain to solve some agricultural issues and build businesses around that. I met one guy who's 18 years old, and he built a blockchain-based voting system. He built a very simple system that allows anyone with a very simple rudimentary mobile phone to scan a QR code. It comes up with an ability to vote one party or the other. It goes back to the polling station, enables them to see the results in real time, even if it was offline for a minute. And you have credibility and integrity of the result because it's all cryptographically secure. So as we think about the future of our democracies, like, kind of want that. And like that's really important. So the creativity around how people are using this technology. I mean, blockchain is interesting because for the first time we have this this database that is resistant to environments that have zero trust. Like, we actually have a system that can work in trustless environments. And that's a very, very powerful concept, and it can be resilient to that. And the internet and computer science has never seen anything like it. And I think blockchain might have even more impact for us in the positive than AI does. AI might have some negative things in comparison. But these are things that are quite powerful. And Ethiopia is like owning blockchain. Like, the amount of entrepreneurs I met who are thinking about this technology and how to apply it to very real problems they are directly facing, and the people within this country all over, even in the most rural sections of the country, are facing, is pretty inspiring and fundamental. And that goes back to that point of there is an urgency driven by practicality and necessity here that will lead to far deeper and better outcomes than you would find in the United States right now, which feels very abstract and very, I don't know, just not as critical in terms of like what is needed.
Wow, I think that's really important to hear, because I think for many years we've been ruled out of the conversation around technological advancement and technology simply because of infrastructure or whatever. And so to have you come and observe and leave with that kind of thought is huge, and I think should be an inspiration and an encouragement to all of us, really. We will open up the floor to questions from you guys. I don't want to. We do this every time we open it up to Q&A. So be thinking about your questions. We'll come back to that. But before we do that, I guess I'd love to. I've always thought this, even before knowing you were coming. Just what are your daily habits? Like, what does someone like you do to get inspired, to stay driven, to do what you do? What are some of your rhythms that you have kind of credited as being keys to you operating at your optimum?
Well, I mean, so at a fundamental level, I love experimenting wildly on myself. I'm super, super weird and super quiet. Like, I'm wearing sandals. I wear these every day. I wear these to the office. I wear, when I met with the CEO of Goldman Sachs, I wore these, and there was an article written how disrespectful I was in wearing sandals in front of the CEO of Goldman Sachs. And I love experimenting based on like what I need. And when I went, a lot of it was kind of random until I went back to Twitter like 4 years ago, and that was a very, very stressful time in my life. And I realized that I needed to change a bunch in order just to stay above water. So I had been meditating for over 20 years, but it was kind of random. And it was, no more than 45 minutes ever. And I tried all these different practices, and I realized just for my own mental health that and sense of calmness and ability to deal with stress and react to stress in a positive way, in a healthy way, rather than be drowned by it, I needed to really get into this practice. So I found this Vipassana technique, which appealed to me because it's super extreme. The only way you can learn the technique is you have to go through a 10-day silent meditation, and you have to do it every year. So that's what I did in South Africa. I was trying to do it in Ethiopia, but there weren't enough teachers at the center here, unfortunately. But there's a great center here. We just need more teachers. So this meditation is probably the toughest thing I do all year, and it's also the best thing I do for myself. And then I knew that I needed to be physically healthy, so I looked critically at my diet, and I played with fasting, and I looked critically at my exercise, and I found this little 7-minute workout app. And the reason that's important is I needed something I could do every single day without an excuse, because if I have an excuse, I'm not going to do it. Like, if my exercise routine depends upon it being sunny and no rain or no snow, that's a disaster. So the 7-minute workout, all you need is a chair and a wall and yourself and 7 minutes, which is not a lot of time, but it's a really hard workout. So no matter what, I never have an excuse not to do this every single day. Sometimes I do 2 of them or 3 of them. And that was really important. And then I knew I needed time for myself to think or to learn. So I wanted to at least build some time in my day where I would be completely alone, because both Twitter and Square at the time were each one of them had over 3,000 people in my whole day. I'm an introvert, so like this is not where I get my energy from. I get my energy from being alone, and then I can do things like this. And I knew I needed to be alone for some time, and I decided the way to do it is to walk to work. And my house is about 8-9 kilometers away from my office. So it takes me about 1 hour and 20 minutes to walk to work. It's a very long walk, and it's in San Francisco, so there's some hills. So it's a little bit of physical exercise, but I get 1 hour and 20 minutes to think or to listen to a podcast or to listen to an audiobook. And then I get in the office, and what I've done is, like, I wake up, I do my meditation, I do my exercise, I walk to work. I'm either by myself or I learn something from a podcast or an audiobook. And for the first 3 hours of my day, like, I've won. Like, no matter what happens the rest of the day, no matter how bad that day is, my day was awesome already. I can just forget the rest of the day, because the first 3 hours I won. And I think it's important to start every day with a win. And when I skip that, I feel, I don't feel like a loser, but I feel like, wow, like, I could have been so much stronger today if I actually did that work. And it just makes me feel happy. So it's finding practices like that based on your current needs and the current necessity. And it goes back to this necessity drives urgency, and it drives innovation, and it drives the right outcomes. But I also just want to be open to constantly changing things that I find useful. And, the fasting thing, I started for the past 2 years. I've only been eating 1 meal a day, and it's only dinner. And then I decided like 2 months ago to switch it to breakfast, and it was a disaster. I could not do it. So now I switched back to dinner, and after this, we're having dinner, and I can't wait. I had some potato chips up there, though, which are very good, by the way.
Good to hear.
But it's just finding these practices that fill a stress or fill a gap, and they change all the time. So that openness and just that desire to find ways to, build and to continue to be creative.
Wow. Dude, I tried the 7-minute workout. I lasted about 12 days. And then I felt like a loser. You've inspired me. I'm going to re-download that and give it a go. That's insane. 1 hour and 20 minutes every day to work, whilst you casually have 6,000 employees working for you in 2 companies.
But that walk has dictated everything. Like I used to wear like color. I used to like wear some white or like green or red. But I realized when I would walk to work, I would like sweat sometimes. And black clothing is very good at hiding that. And then I wear these like really big t-shirts, because I found that if the t-shirts are baggy, then they don't stick to you when you sweat. So that's great. And then I started with sneakers, and I was too slow, and I found these are running sandals that are made in California. So I got my walking time down from 1 hour and 45 minutes to 1 hour 20 minutes by wearing these. Not that I run, I walk really fast, but it's just like all these, like my whole outfit is now dictated by this walk. And it makes things very easy for me as well.
That is incredible. Let's open it up to the floor. If you have a question, let me just see your hand, and then I'll ask it over. So, okay, we'll start with Ermias.
My question is based on what I found the most interesting of your talk was what you said about what your mum taught you in terms of the coffee shop. And this might be a bit of a difficult question, but do you think that what your mum created, that community feeling where people meet together and connect, has been sort of lost in this social media world that we have in terms of what Twitter and Facebook and others have created?
Only if we decide as a population to lose it. I mean, I can point you to so many examples of people coming together and building community over a Twitter or Facebook, and going deeper within their community over Twitter and Facebook, and others, obviously, a Reddit, whatnot. And I can also point you to examples where people use the technology to divide, and people use the technology to isolate, and people use the technology not to speak to each other. But our best moments are when people use the technology to actually meet. And sometimes they meet in protest. Sometimes they meet in activism. Sometimes they meet just to talk with each other. My mom, another mom story, she uses Twitter in a very interesting way, and she would love for you all to follow her. It's at Marsha Dorsey. And if you follow her and you tweet at her just good morning, or you show her a picture of your sunrise or your sunset or a picture of coffee, I guarantee you she will tweet back, and she will say thank you, and she'll say I'm having coffee too. And she's found, the way she uses it is she's found all these women around the world, and all they do every single day, and you can see this in her replies, all they do every day is they just say good morning to each other. And they've never met. Is that community? Yes. They don't have to meet. There's so many channels of that empathy can be built upon. And they will meet someday, they want to. But, some of them may not be able to travel, and some of them might have restrictions on what they can do. And that's what technology can be great at, is it can remove the importance of location. That to me was the most inspiring thing always about the internet. Location is irrelevant. Location is irrelevant. And that's a very, very powerful concept. And the more we can build into that, the stronger I think we all become. It doesn't take away from the location. It just means that more people can participate. So my mom has shifted from her coffee store in St. Louis to Twitter, which she would say, I believe, is much more powerful and much deeper than what she had with her coffee store. But these are not replacements; they're just different, and it's up to us how we use them. And it's the spirit of how she used the venue of the physical coffee store, which is the same as the spirit she uses Twitter for. So it's like that's what we should focus on: is what's the spirit, what's the intent.
You might have to do some explaining as to why she's receiving 50 tweets from Ethiopia.
I won't. She'll figure it out.
She'll figure it out.
So if you ever are in St. Louis, please tweet her at her well. Tweet at her as well, because she'll invite you over for dinner. And she'll make you dinner, or she'll have coffee with you. She'd love to have any of you. So you're always welcome.
Amazing. Wow, I might take you up on that.
Jack, to some young people, especially in Ethiopia, there may be some young kid who lost their self-esteem or somehow think that they cannot be. But, like for you, the way you are speaking with your confidence, you walk with that standards, you go to work, do your work walking, what kind of message would you pass to those teenagers? I think that self-worthy, self-respect, everything. So to those young people who are living in the third world countries, we would like someone to say from Ethiopia, a kid, when I grown up, I want to be like Jack. What kind of message would you pass to those young people? The second, as you say, that technology, you used it. We live now in the world where some people are using an ancient time, like in Ethiopia, to farm using cattle to feed ourselves to survive. But people use the technologies to destroy each other. So what advice would you give in that kind of case that where technology could be used for good, but in some places it ends up being used for negative, where they use the combine to grow the food, but we use the cattle to feed ourselves, and then we use the Facebook and others. So what advice would you give to those kind of people? Thank you.
First, I would say ideally the intention is not to grow up to be like me, because I'm already me, and there's already enough me. I want to be able to. I want to see more uniqueness. I want to see more perspective, and I want to see, like, all of us are a synthesis of so much, and that synthesis is the power. And we should take what you like about a particular person and synthesize it with what you find to be your truth and what you find to be interesting, and take it from this and take it from this and mix it all up and create something new. But I will say to anyone out there that I think the most important thing is, like, what enables you to build confidence in your own self and your own truth. And for me, I grew up with a speech impediment, and it was so bad that I stopped talking at one point. I would not talk to my parents. I would not talk with my brothers. I wouldn't talk with anyone. What I'm doing right now is the scariest thing I could have imagined when I was a kid. Scariest thing. And I realized that at some point, and I said, this is ridiculous. I can't live this way. So I need to figure out how to get out of it. And the way I figured it out, well, the way I took the first step to get out of it was I joined my grade school speech club. And it was the scariest thing I could have imagined doing. And I hated every single minute of it. And they made me speak, and they made me write a speech about a topic I knew nothing about. And they made me get up in front of people. And I completely screwed everything up, but I kept at it. And I kept at it, and I kept at it. And then I learned to be, I didn't learn to be comfortable with it, but I learned how important it was. And I learned that I needed to get better at it. And even today, like, my impediment was with pronouncing words. And I just could not pronounce anything when I was a kid. And even today, I trip up sometimes, and I have this function that I have somewhat of a delay. But I realize that the only way that I'll be able to achieve and make manifest what I want to see manifest in the world is to get over it and to figure it out and to do it. So anything that you see as a block to what you want to build is a tool that you can use to strengthen. And as long as you're comfortable with being uncomfortable and throwing yourself in the fire a bit and learning from it, most importantly, then anything is possible. In terms of like uses of technology, good and bad, yeah, it's true. I think that, again, it requires all of us to form an opinion on how we want to use these technologies in ways that are contributing, and to call out ways that are not. And that will always evolve. And we're not going to create a new technology and just get to positive 100% right away. People will use it in negative ways, and we need to see those negative ways, and sometimes to see the negative in order to strengthen the positive. And we need to realize that we're never going to create a perfect system. All we can do is aspire towards perfection. All we can do is build agility so that we can move to positive contribution faster than spiraling down into something negative. So it's really a function of calling that out and seeing it, making it visible more than anything else to me.
Amazing. That's fascinating. And you touch on the overcoming the motivation to overcome the speech impediment to be able to do what you're meant to do in the world. Have you got to a point now where you know your why? You know why you're motivated to do what you do? What would you say your why is?
I'm a tool maker. I love building tools. Because tools give us capabilities that make us feel kind of superhuman, and I love that feeling. I love seeing it. I love seeing the experience and the electricity that other people feel when using the tools. And I love learning about their gaps and their flaws and improving. But I think tool making is so powerful and just resonates with me.
Amazing. Blaine, do you want to ask your question here?
Sure. Hi, my name is Blaine. You mentioned something about having a deep sense of purpose, and I'm curious how your personal purpose connects to the purpose of your companies, and how that relationship changes over time as the companies grow, as you take on partners, as you have new customers. How does that evolve?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question, because I think purpose, oftentimes when we start companies or we run companies or organizations, we think about missions. Like, what's our mission? And I pay a lot of attention to the words we use and I use. And the interesting thing about a mission is a mission has a goal and it ends. And what's interesting about purpose is it's something that endures. And there'll be multiple missions that serve a purpose. So I think it's really important that we are able to articulate a purpose. Why do we get up in the morning, and why do we do all the crazy things that we have to do at significant cost to ourselves or to our families? Why is this important? And the more time and consideration we make in one, articulating that purpose in a way that resonates, and then two, measuring ourselves against it, I think is time well spent. So for me, my personal purpose is I love I want to empower. I want to empower people around me. I want to empower myself. I want to see this world function as a global humanity rather than the crazy division that we have today and have had in the past. I think it's possible. It may not be in my lifetime, but all the groundwork has been laid. So that connects with the purpose of my two companies. Twitter's purpose is to serve a public conversation. Public conversation is important because it allows the world to see what's happening and learn and talk with each other and acknowledge the issues. And then Square's purpose is economic empowerment, empowering people into the economy, enabling them to participate more fully in it. Which gives us more ideas and more perspectives, and ultimately gives us more collaboration to help us solve some of the bigger problems faster. So it's I guess the companies I want to build, and this may sound a little bit funny, but I don't want people feeling that they work for me or they work for our leaders in the company. Because they don't. They actually work for the purpose. And my job and our leader's job is to point the finger at the purpose and say, you're either serving the purpose or you're not serving the purpose, and here's how we can better serve this purpose, and here's where we're distracting a little bit. So I think it's important to make that realization that like people aren't here necessarily for individuals in the company. They're there to match their sense of purpose with something bigger than themselves, which sometimes they find in companies, sometimes they find in community, sometimes they find in government or organizations, nonprofits, civil society. Who knows what resonates or doesn't, but it's being able to match that I think is important.
Have you tried Injera yet?
Yes.
You did?
Yes, and I'm gonna have it again tonight.
Nice. Good. Yeah, we have some.
I don't think that deserves a clap. But thank you.
The question's over here from the column. My name is Mikhail Meskin. I wanted to ask you, what big opportunities do you see in terms of leapfrog development here in Ethiopia, especially as it relates to youth and entrepreneurs?
Great.
Well, so some of the other questions I've been asking are like, what are the things that are blocking you or causing friction in building in Ethiopia? And the two answers I get, there's a good sense of like what the problems are, but the two answers I get from folks about what's blocking them from building solutions towards that problem is policy, and just really looking deeply at do we have too much policy, or do we have the wrong policy, or is it confusing, or is it not well understood? And then the second one is around payments, actually, and just specifically online and building businesses and getting paid for the work. And there's a whole category of issues that I've heard there. So at the same time, there feels like there's an openness from the government, and there feels like there's an openness to change the policy. And there's a lot of knowns instead of just obscurity of information and unknowns. And I think that's really powerful because you can see line of sight to where Ethiopia has a very, very free market that entrepreneurs will certainly thrive in, but also be attracted to start their companies from all over the continent. So I think as we solve some of those blockers, then we get into some of the problem spaces that I've heard a lot of resonance around. Agriculture is a big one. Bringing more people, connecting more people within the rural areas is a big one. Infrastructure, power is a significant one. So there's a good sense of what problems need to be solved, but I think it's being blocked right now by those two things. But there is an awareness, and there's a desire and a stubbornness to fix them, which I think is awesome.
Hi, my name is Efferson, and I'm a co-founder of a newly launched venture builder based here in Ethiopia. And my question is, you mentioned that when you were initially a founder, you like to create and build things, but now you manage 6,000 people, or you lead corporations that hire 6,000 people. Nice to understand a bit about that journey and how you're able to grow, from those two very different roles to a very different one, but also kind of what skills, resources, and support were very integral to you throughout that journey as well.
Yeah. So I as I said earlier, I never really wanted to be an engineer. I was a hacker and am a hacker, and I kind of do whatever it takes to make it work. And a big part of transition from programming to building a company was really just like seeing these things as generally the same. In programming, you're constructing you're writing a bunch of rules for how the CPU is carrying out the instructions. And in building a company, you're ideally building a bunch of frameworks on how we work together. And those frameworks start at like, why are we here? And then second, okay, so we know why we're here. What are we doing? And third, like, we know what we're doing. What's our goal? And setting these frameworks are important. And then it's just a question of like knowing your role. And it took me some time to realize what my role as a lead of the company was. And I think I would break my role down into 3 parts. The first is that I need to build a great team dynamic. A lot of people who are just getting started in building their companies, they tend to say things like, I need to go find all the rock stars. I need to find the best engineers and designers and folks in the world to build my company. And the problem with that is some of those folks, while they're great, they're really negative and they're really hard to work with. And it ends up over the long term creating a pretty toxic situation that brings the whole company down or the team down. So rather than focus on the individuals, I focus on the dynamic in between the individuals. When I consider a new person that we might hire, my first consideration is this person actually going to positively contribute to a dynamic? Is this person providing contrast to what we have that will be challenging in such a way that makes us more creative? Is this person supportive of when we fail? Is this person resilient for when we make mistakes or we get critique? And is this person able to be positive in a time when things are really looking grim and negative? That's what I look for. And skill can be taught, like mastery can be formed, but if you don't have the general support structure and the dynamic in between, it's all like crazily distracting and terrible, and it feels bad, and everyone's like depressed all the time. So that's number 1, team dynamic. Number 2 is ensure that decisions are being made, and they're being made in the context of who we serve. So again, like when we first start companies or when we step into our careers, we feel like our job is to make decisions. If I have to make a decision, I feel there's something wrong with the company. I don't think my job is to make decisions. I don't mind making the decisions if I have to, but if I have to make a decision, it means that our folks, our team was not empowered to make the decision, or they didn't have the problem set up in the correct way, or we may have the wrong organizational structure. And the reason it's important for the team to make the decision is they're the closest to the customer. They technology trends, potentially. And they, and most importantly, they're not dependent upon any one person to actually do the right work. If you build a system where you have to make all the decisions, what happens when you get sick or when you go away? Then the whole company just goes away too. And I want to build a company that isn't dependent upon me. No single points of failure. So we got to focus on frameworks, and we have to focus on protocol, and we have to focus on how we work instead of building dependencies upon any one individual. So my job is to make sure decisions are being made. They're being made in context, with rich context of who we serve, technology trends, competition, societal trends. And then third is that we raise the bar on ourselves, going back to that competition point, like our competitors ourselves. And while we did this a year ago, we can do so much better. Just saying the phrase, like, just saying the phrase, we can do better, or this isn't good enough, is focusing, and it just raises the bar on what's possible always. And it kind of takes off, like, you know, as we grow older, we start taking things for granted, and we start getting precious about what we have, and we don't want to lose it, right? Like, I remember when I was a kid, I would jump on the skateboard all the time. And now that I'm 43 years old, I don't jump on the skateboard as much because I worry about falling and like breaking my arm or my neck or whatnot. But every now and then I do, and it's a lot of fun. And the same thing happens when we're an organization of individuals. We stop taking risk, and that means that we stop pushing ourselves to really question what we're doing. And the important thing to realize is that while we may not be taking the risk, other people will. And if other people will, they'll get to better answers than us, and over time we'll just become irrelevant. So we need to constantly push ourselves to not be precious about what we have. So it's just, for me, my role is team dynamic, ensuring that a positive one, a healthy one that endures, ensure that decisions are being made and they're being made in context to who we're serving and all these trends that are happening around us, and then raising the bar on ourselves and what we thought was possible.
I know there'll be lots of questions. Jump on Twitter and at Jack, and hopefully he'll answer them. But otherwise, let's just take one more.
So I'll be back.
And you'll be back. And you'll be back.
Not goodbye.
Good. We can do it, right? Maybe.
We can do it again. Yeah.
Good. Okay, we'll get some more questions taken on the next time you guys are back around. Okay, so Narasan, you have the mic, and go for it.
Hi, Jack. I'm really glad that you visited people on the ground making their election, and not like the high-level people, because it will give you a better sense of the ecosystem and how people are working hard here. My question is, what kind of message would you take to the high-level policymakers here, possibly? And what kind of message would you take to the people at maybe in Silicon Valley, or people with resources, so that they would help us create a vibrant ecosystem here, both in the startup level and established businesses level? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons I wanted to start here with these conversations. I wanted to learn as much as I could so that I can be informed about what would be most critical. And I don't think I'm there yet. I'm not ready yet to go to a prime minister and say, like, X, Y, and Z needs to change. And I also don't think it's my place to do so. But I can share what I've learned, and I can share what I think is possible. And when I come back here, I do want to meet government, and I do want to have a message. And one of the things I want to say is, like, wow, this country and this people just has so much potential to lead itself, and also to lead and inspire the continent, and lead and inspire the world. And I think, the resources are there, the talent is here, the desire for self-actualization is here, and there's some blockades I've encountered and I've heard. And I want to speak to some of the policy things I've heard. I want to speak to the payment stuff I've heard. I want to speak to the desire that folks have to solve real problems and solve them in a way that's compelling. But I think Ethiopia has such amazing energy to it that's just waiting to be unlocked. And I don't think it's someone from outside Ethiopia that can unlock it. You all know what's blocking you, and anything that I can do to amplify that, if it's useful, then I will. But like, what's been most impressive about this country is there's just so many knowns, and there's so many there's such an awareness of what needs to change, and it's just work now. It's just work, and it's just push, and it's just driving towards that. And where I can be helpful, I certainly will be. But success is going to be the country and the people driving itself, because it's already here, it's already happening, and it's happening very quickly, and you can feel it, and everyone I talk to has felt it, and it's evident. So if I can help amplify, if I can help communicate, if I can help tell the narrative to where I come from and to my companies, I will do all those things. But I want to first understand. I've done the listening part. Now I need to do the work to understand, and then whatever I can to help improve, I will.
Hello, my name is Bethel Samson. I'm a medical student, and one thing that I've had a lot of ideas that I wanted to work on and actually implemented on one app called Teki. But my question to you is that I really related to the part where you said, okay, I didn't really want to be an entrepreneur, and the fact that you said I had to make a lot of sacrifices. But my question to you is, what made you say this is worth it, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life? Or just what kept you making this sacrifices that you needed to make?
Well, I didn't really have any other ideas. So just like, it's kind of like this attitude of like, it's this or nothing. And again, it's just like you do whatever it takes to make it work. And I trusted myself enough that like, if it wasn't working, I would learn why, and then I would figure out how to shift in the right way. And I think having that trust in oneself to know that like you're going to push yourself as much as you can. And then if you just keep banging your head against a wall, maybe it's time to step back and look in another direction. And maybe that direction brings you back in a stronger way, in a more clarified way. I also benefit from the fact that I have very, very few close friends in my life, but they are very strong to me. Like, they tell me what's up, and they keep me honest, and they call me out for doing ridiculous stuff. And sometimes I'm like, no, this is what I want to do. But it's important to have people in your life that push back and like just critique you and feel comfortable saying anything to you. And I find that in my friendships, and I find that in my coworkers, like Sierra right there. She tells me what's up all the time. I mean, just look at her. She's like, get on with it. And she's heard the story like 1,000 times. But it's just, you need to fill your life with people who are comfortable saying what's on their mind, and not with a bunch of people who are just saying yes, 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 but actually, no, that's stupid, or no, that's great, but you're missing this. So I benefit a lot from the things in my life that are mirrors into my own ridiculousness or weirdness or stupidness or whatnot, just so I can see it and I can continue to be critical of myself, because otherwise I wouldn't, I'd miss a ton, and I don't think I'd end up being proud of what I was doing, because I wasn't integrating that enough.
We're coming to the end. I'm aware you have to fly out. One thing we usually do when we have our guests here is we have Mela means solution. It means all together. It was created to fuel entrepreneurship in the country and to inspire people to be the solution to the problems they see. So we have people listening online who are either in some university in northern Ethiopia to sitting at their computer at work in DC watching this stuff, wanting to somehow come back and contribute to the growth, to start something. And so we usually end by just asking our guests to just and then a whole bunch of people in the room also sitting on so much potential to create, to do something big, to create jobs and be a positive impact in the city and in the nation and the nations on the continent. So I mean, with that platform, listening, and what kind of one thing would you say to them? No pressure.
Let's see. I think I would just go back to identify the essential, like the critical, essential, foundational skills that you need in order to serve your personal purpose. And that comes with the condition that you understand what your purpose is. And it's okay if you don't right now. It's okay. But working every day to just write down what you believe your purpose is, what it should be, to refine that articulation every single day is worth the work and worth the frustration and worth the stress. Because when you have a good articulation of that, everything tends to arrange itself towards the next obvious step and the next obvious step, and then it starts pointing you in the direction either explicitly or implicitly of where you need to go. And so having that articulation of your purpose is critical. But I do think like the number one skill that we all should focus on is problem solving and learning. Like, how do we learn better every day? And this is what school should be teaching us, but it doesn't. My school didn't teach me how to learn. It taught me about history, and it taught me about math, and it taught me about programming computers a little bit, kind of, not really. And it taught me some other subjects, but it didn't really teach me how to learn. And if our institutions are not going to teach us how to learn, then we have to take it upon ourselves to teach ourselves how to learn, teach our kids how to learn, and teach each other how to learn. And it's just finding a modality that works for you, and that teaches you how to ultimately solve problems. And for me, and this is not going to be true for everyone, but for me, like the greatest outcome of me learning how to program was not becoming an engineer, was not becoming a hacker. It taught me how to solve problems. It taught me how to deal with problems. Programming taught me how to break problems into much smaller parts. It taught me how to create a hypothesis. It taught me how to test that hypothesis. But most importantly, I could approach these problems and I could see the results instantly. And because of that instantaneous gratification, I could learn much faster and I could shift and build from that. And so I think, you know, we've recently in Silicon Valley and other places in the world, we've talked a lot about how everyone should learn how to program and everyone should learn how to become an engineer. I don't think that's the case at all. I think people should learn something like programming, but not to become an engineer, but instead to learn how to solve problems better, because everything is about solving problems. Everything we do is about solving problems. And if we could teach programming not to make new engineers, but to help all of us understand how to solve problems better, that's a much more equipped world that is ready to face a bunch of the challenges that we're all facing right now. So that skill of problem solving, however you deepen that skill, is really critical every day.
Wow, Jack, this has been a fascinating conversation. I still can't quite believe you're sitting here next to me and we're having this conversation. We are very, very grateful to have you. Some of our entrepreneurs within our community, we wanted to say thank you by giving you some gifts.
Thank you.
We have a really incredible startup. They create a nice leather. They call Tiber leather.
Oh, amazing.
They create
Thank you.
a Twitter logo leather for you.
Thank you.
And a package with that. We also have a Mela mug.
Oh wow,
for
this
you.
goes on. This is like a wallet.
It keeps going. A little Twitter wallet. These guys are incredible. It's a social enterprise.
Another book.
Doing cool
Awesome.
stuff. We have a mug for you, and then we also have, we saw your top and we just thought you need an Ethiopian version of that top. So we had someone in our community out of Gabi material get you a top. So hopefully black can turn to white and this be
Yes.
your norm.
In this case, yes.
And then we have one of Ethiopia's world famous brewers, Omnipoyo, create a special beer. They were one of our guests, so you can enjoy the beer there.
I will drink this tonight.
In your Malama. So, ladies and gentlemen.
It has a feather on it too. It's amazing. Well played.
So this is a once in a lifetime opportunity till Jack comes back for the second time. But we are so grateful to have him here, that he would stop off and share his time with us. Can we all just put it together to say a massive thank you for
Thank
Jack.
you.
Thank you, Jack.
I do want to do one thing. I've been like going around and just taking these like selfies. I usually don't take selfies, so I'm not the selfie guy. I want to make clear I'm not the selfie guy, so I usually don't do this, but it's a very efficient way to get everyone in a photo, it turns out. So what I want to do is, like, as much as we can, just like centralize
into the middle, yeah.
And then I'm gonna be right here, and then I'm just gonna like take a selfie from here.